Sometimes the early bird catches the worm, and if you are a fan of only ranked matchups, well, Saturday is made for you because number 9 Missouri marches on down to College Station, Texas to take on the number 25 Texas A&M Aggies. And we're going to break everything on down. So welcome on into SEC Unfiltered. He's Dave Shumate. I'm Cole Thompson, talking everything occurring at Kyle Field as the Tigers take on the Aggies in College Station. But real quickly, make sure that you hit the subscribe button down below because this is your number one source for all things SEC moving forward. Download the podcast version of the show wherever you get your podcast listening systems. Follow us on the social channels, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at SEC Unfiltered. Follow Dave at Mock10 Sports, me at Mr. Cole Thompson, and check out all of our great work found at SECUnfiltered.com. This episode is brought to you by our friends over at RHOBACK. Look good, feel good this upcoming fall on game days with RHOBACK.com using the promo code SECU for 20% off your first purchase. Dave, the Tigers coming off of a much-needed bye week to get their mind and bodies right, but their first also major real road test away from Como in an environment that when it is humming is one of the cathedrals of chaos in the sport. And Texas A&M has got to be feeling pretty good about themselves, getting yet another win in the Southwest Classic, finding a way to once again show that their defense is trending in the right direction. And certainly this could be a game that has massive college football playoff implications down the line.
Yeah, I think this is one of the games. I don't know if you did a video call or maybe it's by myself. I think we talked. This is one of the more under the radar games heading into the season from a standpoint of a springboard game, and you still feel that way. I know A&M lost the first game to Notre Dame, but I feel like they made up for it, at least in my game-by-game predictions, in the swamp. Granted, Florida isn't a great team. Take it for what it is. But again, they're finding ways to win games. We can both attest. A&M's perception-wise is they usually find ways to mess it up. Well, again, it's not always pretty offensively. I think the defense is doing their thing. They're having people step up for people that are injured on the other side of the football and defense as well. But offensively, hadn't been pretty. They got to get the vertical passing game going. But they're mounting wins. They're mounting wins, and that's all that matters. Again, it doesn't matter if it's a bad Florida team, a solid MAC team in Bowling Green, and a team that just seems to always find ways to beat themselves at Arkansas. But you're chalking up wins. Got a real shot, like you said, Cole. Probably the biggest matchup on paper of the day, if we kind of want to be a complete. I know College Game Day and stuff's in Berkeley for the Cal-Miami matchup, but overall, I think this one has more, like you say, playoff implications and kind of springboard, even for a team that maybe outside of the college football playoff here. I mean, Cole, would you say you feel like the loser here? Again, I hate to say this about Missouri because the schedule, they still got a lot of winnable games on the schedule, but do you feel like Missouri, if they were to go into Kyle Field and lose this game, you kind of knock them out of the playoff contention there? I mean, not mathematically, obviously.
You don't knock them out of the playoff contention, but you do realize that at this point they have to get the marquee win. And I don't know what that marquee win is. For A&M, again, the atmosphere of Kyle Field, what is the 12th man? What is playing at that vicinity, especially even with an early kick? I mean, you look at the numbers. Vegas is looking in favor of A&M, and home field advantage plays a role. 1 point spread currently on Vegas right now in favor of A&M. So you know that these are two pretty evenly matched teams. I think the difference here right now, Dave, is that one is coming off of an emotional final swan song farewell to Arlington, to Jerry World, to the Southwest Classic being played at AT&T Stadium, and the other one is getting healthy at the right time. But speaking of that game, A&M's ability to come back, find a way to deliver. The fourth quarter alone, Le'Veon Moss rushed for 90 yards. Arkansas rushed for 1. Their defense stepped up with a big strip sack against Taylon Green. Physical force from Shamar Stewart, from Nick Scorton. That's your MO. That is your bread and butter. And the way that we have seen teams like Vanderbilt, teams like Boston College, even a little bit of Buffalo at times, be able to put pressure on Brady Cook. In the identity of what is a Mike Elko-led team, the defense taking that next step forward and also creating turnovers, which is a major deal, that is going to be, I think, your X factor for setting a tone early on in this game. Because if you can take away the run in Marcus Carroll and Nate Noel, you're feeling really good as an Aggie.
No, you're right, too. I think if you can take away that, you got it. I'm with you. That's first and key. You always got to stop the run. But if they can get the run game going, too, because it almost like you have to, because if they get the run game going, that's where I feel like Brady Cook's at his best off the play action right there. That opens up lanes where you may not be able to bracket Luther Burden as much as you want. Now, obviously, they have other weapons too. Mookie Cooper, Theo Weiss, and guys like Makai Miller's a good player. I think the key, too, in this game, Cole, is when I just mentioned when Brady Cook gets those opportunities downfield, he has to connect on them. I feel like he's been leaving some food on the table there in a couple of these games, and it hadn't come back to hurt him. If he does that this week, if they leave some plays on the field, This is the week, I think, for the first time all year, it could come back to bite you. If you're Missouri, you like the scheme that Kirby Moore and Eli Drinkwitz set up. I think, again, some people are higher on Brady Cook as an overall prospect than I am. I think he's more of a product of the system. I give a little bit more of a nod to Drink and Kirby Moore here than I do just overall Brady Cook's overall ability. Just think he fits the system nice. But he's got to start taking advantage of the plays that are schemed up for him. Can't be leaving on the table. There's not going to be a lot of them. And granted, to be fair, A&M's been giving up a lot of explosives. I saw Mike Elko mention today. Very similar to the 2018 Texas A&M defense, which I was a part of. We were pretty good, much improved, but we gave up a lot of explosive plays. Elko shored that up in 19. I'm sure they'll be better next year. But this year, as far as we know, they've given up some explosives. They're probably not going to be a ton of them, but when they're available, Brady Cook's going to have to go connect on them, I think, in this one.
The problem is also that you look at a Missouri team that can win with explosive plays. They haven't yet. We can all agree that right now, so far, the overall Brady Cook minus Luther Burden connection has been feeble at best. But this is also a Missouri team that returns all 5 of its starting receivers from last year. Theo Wease is a perfect complement. Mookie Cooper, Marquise Johnson, Joshua Manning. You have players that all can be difference makers. Josh Norfleet at tight end. So those explosive plays that you're talking about are going to be critical, but it also starts with having a good pass rush. What I saw last week from Shamar Turner, Shamar Stewart, Torian York as a delayed blitzer, open field tackler, and Nick Scorton living up to the expectations that I had of him coming on in from Purdue as the SEC Defensive Player of the Year. That's a way to make the deep ball passes. That's a way to eliminate the explosive plays because if you're forcing yourself to have to get quick strikes because your offensive line isn't holding if you're Missouri. And that's a big testament that we have to go ahead and give credit to. No, a team like Texas A&M has gotten so much better in their front 7 since week 1. And they were decent in week 1. It wasn't terrible. It was absolutely
just
an overall.
Fourth quarter, they wore down, yeah.
It's a war down game, and it's a bunch of transfers and newcomers trying to build underneath one relationship. They have grown since that week. And now you have A&M sitting at 4-1 pretty confidently, feeling like that they can take on the world. And again, you brought up springboard games. This is one of those springboard games. For Missouri, it's great that you have a Luther Burden, a Theo Wease, Mookie Cooper. It's fantastic that you have a Nate Noel and a Marcus Carroll. And I think that in this game alone, knowing that you have to prepare for 2 running backs that are drastically different from each other. Both have the straight line speed if they get in the open field to make you miss, but one is known for its power. One is known for its vertical speed, his ability to make defenders miss behind the line of scrimmage. That gives you a second counterpunch that really can benefit teams on the road. And I think that that's something that if you are Eli Drinkwitz, if you are Kirby Moore with the play calling, you have to make sure that is embedded into your system. And also the main thing is, simply because if it's not working in the first quarter, doesn't mean you can't run away from it in the second. You can't change up the game plan because we've watched against a team, especially in the Notre Dame game, where Jeremiah Love was finally able to get that push, that momentum, get a couple of big-time explosive plays. It took a while. You wore down Texas A&M's defense. If you can't wear down Texas A&M's defense, unfortunately, you're going to have to connect with the deep ball. But there is this something about having 2 great complementary running backs that play well with each other and also know how to play off of each other that might be able to give an advantage to a team like Missouri on the road in an environment like Kyle Field.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. That will be key. And then maybe throw out in the flat. Again, if you get the run game going, Missouri, it opens up so much. And you know Missouri, they like to stretch the field horizontally and vertically. Brett Norfleet, I know he's coming off an injury, played a little bit in Boston College. He could be kind of that guy in the flats. Maybe they get him in the middle of the field. That's something to see as well. I mean, A&M's giving up the explosive plays is what would scare me if I'm Mike Elko and Jay Bateman in this one and the Aggie fan, because I do think just between the 2 minds of Eli Drinkwitz and Kirby Moore, how they like to stretch the field, not just vertically, but horizontally as well. It's a lot of field to cover. And you're a team that's already been giving up a lot of explosives, and this is by far the best offense you face. So I feel like this is a little bit Missouri has a lot of weapons. They're a little bit of a hard offense to defend, as long as they're not beating themselves with penalties and stuff like that. And Brady Cook's connected on the deep ball.
Texas A&M currently enters this game 64th in pass defense. Missouri ranks 5th. Now, again, level competition, completely different. Another major test for Missouri's defense underneath Corey Batoon, who at times this year has looked elite. At times this year, they have given up explosive plays. If you go back and you talk about the Boston College game, that game, the score is drastically different than the on-field play. Take out those 2 big explosive touchdowns from Thomas Castellanos. it's a completely different game and Missouri hits the over, but you can't be susceptible to allowing those explosives to happen, whether it be a wide receiver, whether it be a tight end across the middle of the field. You miss a tackle in space and then they're off to the races. Explosive plays have hurt Missouri at times, but it doesn't tell the entire story. And Corey Batoon, I think, deserves a lot of credit for having to replace a guy in Blake Baker and bring in a staff that left with Baker to Baton Rouge to fix some areas of this team. And they do feel like that they are on par. They're one of the best teams when it comes to stopping the run. Le'Veon Moss outrushed all of Arkansas's running backs. He outrushed Arkansas by 90% on Saturday in the fourth quarter. There's a lot to like about where Missouri is. Le'Veon Moss has to be a difference maker, but so does the quarterback position. And you and I have been on record with this, and I feel like I have to say this every single time that we talk to A&M fans, because if they come in the comments and they're always so brutal about it, nobody is saying that Connor Wigman is not good enough to start for Texas A&M and is not a good quarterback. Nobody is saying that. What we're saying is that Marcel Reed fits Colin Klein's system better. But with that being said, Dave, if I'm Texas A&M in this game and I want to set a tone early on, I got to see what Connor Wigman is if he's healthy. I start him. If I am going into this matchup, as much as I believe Marcel Reed fits the system better for Colin Klein, I know what I'm going to get for him. What if I get more and I get more explosivity and I get that deep ball trajectory and I get that physical force down the field and you're pushing the ball vertically and I get that with 15? When I'm in a win-win situation for whatever happens in this game, especially moving forward for the rest of the regular season.
Yeah, I keep seeing some A&M fans say they're not opening the playbook up for Marcel Reed. And I think to an extent that's somewhat true. The training wheels are still on. They can't get really anything going in the vertical passing game. I also don't think Connor Wigman's really a great fit for what Colin Klein does. But I think in today's football, again, you're not just going to go run your way just down the field if you have an inaccurate passer like you do with Marcel Reed. Maybe he develops down the line to something. Maybe. I'm not ready to just throw him to the wayside yet. But specifically for this year, I just don't think A&M's going to go reach the goal of 8-9 wins with Marcel Reed at the quarter. We've seen it, and again, you stated, we've all been on record saying I think at the time he was it. Going in after the Florida game where they did just run to victory against a bad football team, I think you had to test it out against Bowling Green the next week. Obviously, Connor Wigman couldn't go. He didn't practice any last week. You had to roll with him. And if it probably wasn't for 3 turnovers, you probably don't win that game. Again, and A&M forced those. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying Arkansas is very turnover prone. Missouri, not as much. But again, at some point, you just can't rely on, hey, man, as long as we just run the football and don't turn the ball over, we'll win the game. It's like, dude, this isn't 2004, 2005 anymore. That one back then with good defense, you got to score now. You got to generate explosive plays. If Wigman's available to go, to your point, Cole, I think you got to make the move now for just your longevity of this season of hitting your ceiling. I think if you play Marcel Reed, you're lowering your ceiling. I think, again, like you said, you can't just rely on no turnovers and just running the football now. You're going to have to make some explosive plays. I think Connor Wigman, if he can go, gives him the best shot to do that. Not only win on Saturday, but ultimately go beat LSU down the line, potentially go beat Texas down the line, win at Auburn, stuff like that. You're going to have somebody who can stretch the field vertically.
But, Dave, isn't it a good thing to kind of have right now? Because here's the thing. Currently, if you talk about where A&M is, they talk about how the offense is still struggling. I know that I said the offense is humming. That's probably a wrong word that I've used, so I apologize. What I will say is that given the circumstances that you're working with an offensive line that still is growing, with a wide receiver core that isn't creating separation, with the tight end who, for my money, the best tight end that you have, Donovan Green, has not come back fully healthy. So you have to rely on Thor. You have to rely on Trey Watson. It's working with a quarterback that still is learning the ins and outs of how to play the position at the collegiate level. So it's good. But isn't it kind of a good thing if you're Texas A&M right now, knowing that if Wigman does work, we can kind of go back to what the game plan was at the start of the season? Notre Dame has a really good defense. He's fully healthy. He's in the right direction. We know that we can only build off of this. And now we're going to potentially be in that 9-3, 10-2 record. But if it doesn't work, well, we just won 3 games with the guy who was the backup. We just won 3 games and 2 SEC games. We entered this week as the only team sitting at 2-0 in conference play with a guy who is currently not supposed to be our starter. So in my opinion, it's a win-win if you're Texas A&M, but I feel like that you have to start Wigman in this game simply because Missouri may be preparing for what they've seen of Marcel Reed and only Marcel Reed, and it gives you that curveball to be able to switch things up and maybe deliver a performance that ends up getting you a big-time win. And I mean a win that we're talking about as maybe we oversold Missouri just a little bit too much.
Yeah, I would agree with that. If A&M won this game, yeah, you would be all right. Yeah, that was kind of the tipping point of Missouri going back to the Boston College and Vanderbilt games. That you're like, yeah, maybe everybody was a little high on them. I mean, granted, I think a lot of people were high on Missouri. Not only they had a lot of people back on offense, but just the turnover on defense, the schedule. I think is why a lot of people like Missouri. But yeah, to your point with A&M, I think that would show them something different. But again, it's something we don't know. I mean, how healthy is Connor Wigman? We really don't know. I mean, it's not his throwing shoulder, so that's good. But again, how healthy is he? I don't really think you go 2 quarterback system because they're both so different that you're tipping plays off if you're rotating them. You got to be a little more similar. But I just think Connor Wigman, for A&M to start winning games against good competition. No offense to Arkansas, Arkansas just beats themselves. In that level, not turning the ball over and just running the football can win you football games.
Well, here's the good news.
But against good teams, that's not going to be – and Missouri is a good team. You're not going to go win those games. You got to make explosive plays.
Yeah, here's the good news or bad news, depending on how you want to put it. Connor Wigman will once again be a game-time decision, according to Mike Elko.
I think it's going to be – I think Elko said a couple weeks ago it's going to be every week.
It's going to be probably a game-time decision. So for Missouri, maybe that puts you at a disadvantage because of now you have to study twice as much tape to be able to game plan for 15 and 10. But at the same time, Marcel Reed is 3-0. So let's just go ahead, call a spade a spade. Dave, as you and I always like to do, let's pick a player from each side that we're watching. I'll go first with Texas A&M. I want to see one wide receiver break out. I want to because of Missouri comes into this game as a top 5 secondary. And I'm not sure if it's simply because of the level of competition that they've gone up against, or if it's because they just are so physically gifted. I mean, Toriano Pride had a big time blunder against Vanderbilt, but he also came up and nearly walked away with a pick in the end zone and double overtime against Diego Pavia. So what version are we getting? I don't know who it's going to be. For my money, I would love to see actually Noah Thomas kind of build off what he did last week. He's a 6'6" mismatch nightmare. He has good open field speed. If you're able to create that opportunity to where he's winning at the point of attack and making the defender miss at the line of scrimmage, he can get you into good manageable situations at the midfield, open up the playbook a little bit more. I feel like that this is a game where you want to see those guys who you had a lot of faith in last year. Noah Thomas being one of them as the future long-term heir apparent of Anaya Smith, that security blanket. This is a game where I really think that he needs to step up, especially because of its SEC competition. So that's my guy for Texas A&M. Who you got?
I'm going to go BJ Mays. He stepped up for the injured Tyreek Chappelle, who I think is going to have a pretty long, lengthy injury there for most of the season. So I think BJ Mays, a kid that's been a fringe starter, transferring over from UAB, 6'1", 195, did a good job last week against Arkansas. Does he take the honors of covering Luther Burden? I'd have to go check to see if they're exactly going back. I've watched A&M games, so I hadn't paid attention to see if they're swapping corners or following people. So that'll be an interesting thing there. Somebody on the back end's going to have to play well to win this game. Again, we talk the storyline really is the A&M offense, but I think the defense, again, they can give up explosive plays. They're going to have to limit that. It's going to have to be someone like BJ Mays stepping up on the back end like he played Saturday, played really well. I liked him going into the year. I remember him from UAB. I remember him as a recruit. I think he went to Incarnate Word right out of high school. But
I think it was Incarnate Word.
I'll keep an eye on.
Who do you got? All right, who do you got from Missouri?
From Missouri, I've been going back and forth on this one.
You want me to go first?
Give me Armand Mimbo, the right tackle over there. A&M's defensive front's a unit that could take over a game, keep them in a game if they're playing well. Armand Mimbo, one of the leaders on that offensive line. I think this is a game. We talk about what travels on the road. It's usually offensive line. It's usually a run game. We've talked about the run game for Arkansas. For them to have success, it's going to have to start up front naturally. I think it's going to start with, I think you see a big game from Nate Noel and Marcus Carroll because of the Missouri offensive line. Start with Armand Mimbo, who's a leader of that team. You got to play well up front on the offensive line in a road game against a team like A&M, especially College Station. It'll be rocking. It'll be loud. The 12th man, that'll be key. Communication, manning up, getting that run game going like we talked about. Give me Armand Mimbo.
You picked an offensive player from Missouri. I picked an offensive player for Texas A&M. You picked a defensive player for Texas A&M. I picked a defensive player for Missouri. Give me Chris McClellan. I feel like that if you're able to win against an offensive line that at times did a great job protecting Marcel Reed or Connor Wigman. And other times there were still some question marks, and there have been at times against bigger defenses, the Notre Dame game specifically. This is why you brought him on in. Chris McClellan joins the roster from his time at Florida. He's a bigger, physical, finesse type of defensive tackle. If he is able to add pressure up the middle and really do a good job of forcing Le'Veon Moss to work to the outside, that's going to open up the plays for a guy like Corey Flagg. That's going to open up the plays for a guy like Toriano Pride coming down. That's going to open up the plays for a guy like Chuck Hicks or Johnny Walker. That's going to make it more manageable to take away the run game and force Marcel Reed, if it is him starting. If it's Connor Wigman, it's going to have to be with the arm, but both having to attack downfield. Make those explosive plays happen. For me, everything starts in the trenches. If Chris McClellan can have a great game, if he can have good execution, I think that there is a reason to believe that this might be able to be a matchup where we finally are seeing the version of Missouri that we kind of were promised and many people were underselling. Dave, let's lock in some prediction. Kickoff at 11 a.m. Central Time, Kyle Field. Line set at -1. Over under currently at 48.5. You want to go first? Who walks away with the win? Do the Tigers get the marquee victory that finally gives them hope as a legit SEC threat? Or is this more Mike Elko taking the step in the right direction?
Look, Vegas probably likes Missouri in this one. I know A&M's favored about 1. They usually give the home team 3.5 points. I think on a neutral field, Missouri's favored in this one. In college football now, and even professional football, and even at the high school level, most important position in football is the quarterback position, and probably even in all sports, quarterback. Whoever usually has the best quarterback, who do you trust the most in generating explosive plays, taking care of the football? I'm going to go with Missouri in this one. I think they get the big win. I trust Brady Cook more. I think he has his best game of the season. I think he hits on some of these. Again, he's going to have some negative plays too, because A&M has a really good defense. But A&M, they're susceptible to giving up explosive plays. I think Missouri takes advantage of that. I've always loved the way they move Luther Burden around. It's the slide on the outside in the backfield. I think they take advantage and get theirs from an explosive standpoint. I think A&M goes with Marcel Reed again until I see otherwise. I just think Connor Wigman's hurt right now. I mean, we're not getting a lot of information. So I'm going to go with Marcel Reed getting the start. I just don't think they generate enough explosive plays, dude. And I think this is the first game since – I mean, it's the best offense they played all year by far.
Yeah.
I mean, I know they lost to Notre Dame, but I think this is the first game since Marcel Reed's had to start that, hey, you're going to have to go score some points. You can't just not turn the ball over and just expect to win it with your run game. No offense to the A&M offensive line. Le'Veon Moss, really good player. Mark Ingles, good player. I trust the run game. You're just going to have some explosive plays. I think Missouri gets it done. Give me Missouri 31-24.
Fair enough. I think that this goes one of two ways. I think Missouri either blows them out of the water and we finally are talking about Missouri in the light that we should have. Because I'll be completely real. I'm tired of being the only person in the media that actually believes in Missouri. I'm tired of being the only person that thinks that just because if you have a couple of woeful outings, it means that you're fake. We don't know that yet. I think that we will find out who they are. So they either blow them out of the water or this comes down to the wire and somebody walks away with a close win. And I'm going to go lean the latter. I just feel like Texas A&M's defense has turned a corner. Mike Elko is the czar of developing defensive linemen. He's brought in the right people. There no longer feels to be this kind of backing realm of transfers and former players all working together. Shamar Stewart's coming off of the best game I've ever seen him play, and that is a major statement. I think that you are going to have to win vertically, and I'm not just saying that from when it comes to Missouri standpoint. I think Texas A&M standpoint too. The run game is going to be a blessing for you, especially with Le'Veon Moss, especially with Marcus Carroll, Nate Noel. But I don't think it's the only way that you can win. You're going to have to force Marcel Reed or Connor Wigman to expand plays with their arm. Brady Cook is going to have to connect when he gets those deep shots. He can't afford to have these moments where a Luther Burden is streaking down the field and nobody is 20 yards within him and it just is overthrown by 2 feet. This is not one of those games where it can happen because in A&M, much like you said, this will be the first real test since Marcel Reed has taken over as the starting quarterback because of injury or not. This is also the first real test for Missouri where, hey, you let them hang around a little bit too long. You're not pulling the comeback. You're not doing it. It cannot happen. So ultimately, this is a close game for me. But I am a bandwagon fan, and everyone knows this. So I'm taking Missouri. 100% taking Missouri. The Tigers, they're trumping the Aggies. I'm going to go 24-20 final score. Very close call. This comes down to the wire. Luther Burden gets the big time touchdown in the fourth quarter. They pull away. And to any A&M fan out there saying, Cole, you doubt us, have me keep doubting you. Because you want to know why? I picked against A&M twice. A&M is 2-0 when I pick against them. So maybe this is actually the curse that I'm trying to make sure happens for you. Missouri wins 24-20. It's a close call at the end of the day, but I just feel like I can trust Brady Cook having a week off, having a week to get healthy, get his mind right, and the game's also out of Como, which might be a good litmus test about where this team stands. That's how they come away with the win.
No, Cole, I agree. I think this game comes at a good time for Missouri. They weren't playing their best football for 2 weeks. They got to reset the clock at the bye week. Real opportunity here to go on the road and prove yourself in the first. I mean, again, you didn't play great against Boston College. You won. Didn't play great against Vanderbilt. You could have lost. This is their first kind of big game. I think they do play well in. I think the matchup is I don't see A&M with any real obvious advantage in this game across the board. I don't. I think it will be close, but I do think I'm with you. I think Missouri just gets it done.
Missouri gets it done, but Texas A&M keeps things interesting. Or are we just wrong? And you're right. Comment down below your score, your overall thoughts. Like, rate, review, subscribe. Make sure you're following us on all the socials at SEC Unfiltered. Download the podcast version of the show wherever you get your podcast listening systems. Hit that ring notification. That way you don't miss a single episode of SEC Unfiltered. Live reactions, post-game shows, Sunday Fun Day, Dave Talk Ball, the call-in hour, everything that we got going on here. Follow Dave on Twitter at Mock10Sports, me on Twitter at Mr. Cole Thompson, and check out all of our great work found at secunfiltered.com. Let's go in for a good game. Aggie Nation, MIZ, peace.